sticking around, everybody. And if you would make sure, let me know when I've hit 5 minutes, because I always talk too long. And I was going to try and go by your directive, but you talk so fast, you can probably do it.
I should see you more slides.
I can't do that. Okay, thank you. I'm Karen Belanca. I'm the former mayor of Jupiter. And was up until March. I stepped down. Yeah, I am an urban planner, and I'm speaking actually because Stephanie Thoburn, our assistant planning director, thought it would be good to try and encourage more people, more planners to run for elected office. So she made me, she volunteered me for this. So I'm not sure I'm inspiring anyone to do it, but please consider it. All right, so I'm going to briefly talk about some of the initiatives that Jupiter has for density, housing, and job growth, which I think as we look towards 2040. Just like gardens, Jupiter has historically supported low density, and if you look through our documents, we're always talking about small town fields. So that presents a challenge as we look at increasing density over the next few years. In fact, our basic multifamily density is just 8 units an acre and a maximum of 3 stories in height. So I know those of you that are Rick's probably going, I can't, what can you do with that? Besides our comp plan, Jupiter also has an adopted strategic plan, and I know maybe most cities have them, but I just want to stress how important that I found it to be both as an elected official and as a planner, because it tends to flesh out some of what you have in the comp plan, or maybe address issues such as if you don't have an economic element yet, what you want to see done. And so I'm going to touch on those 3 areas. Density in the right place. Okay. And for Jupiter, that means that we would go up to 15 units an acre in certain areas, such as the transit-oriented development, where we look. What are you saying? Our redevelopment overlay areas, workforce housing. We have 3 redevelopment overlay areas that were established to allow greater density, to obviously redevelop some of our older commercial areas, to allow mixed use. And this allows opportunity for really providing for workforce housing. This is one area, this is Tony Penna redevelopment overlay. And as you can see, there's the proposed tri-rail stations right there where the yellow star is. It's also near one of our major employers. And thank you to the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council and Kim. We had a charrette a few years ago and started looking at the form that this area would take. And that's, I guess, the 4-story building, which for Jupiter, again, is a little unusual, but is acceptable. And hopefully, nothing has started in this area yet, but we do have incentives in place. And once Tri-Rail starts to move forward, we know this will become an area that will really be revitalized. Natalie was talking about trying to redevelop large asphalt strip centers, and this happens to be on the left, on the right. I should have just done a fast forward thing. It happens to be a large area that I've always thought would be perfect for a fairly dense mixed-use project with some height to it. It's close to, it's on US 1 Indian Town Road. Happens to be across the street from Harborside. And those of you, get some of the North County news on the right know that that became quite controversial. So, a lesson learned is you can adopt these wonderful regulations in the abstract and find out when you build them that there's a problem. So obviously, making sure you get as much buy-in as possible is important. And fortunately, just having hearings and nobody comes doesn't mean anything to you build it, so careful. All right, going to jobs quickly. Just like gardens, we have some targeted industries that they're going to promote value-added jobs. And I think like many of us, we found that we as government need to play a greater role in delivering jobs. Just simply having zoning is no longer enough. So the town is really looking at growing the bioscience cluster, which started with Scripps and Mox Plum. Our main vehicle doing that has been a $3 million loan guarantee program for bioscience that actually had to create to help convince the governor that Scripps should come to North County. We've been very successful with it. $3 million has been given out, if you will, and about $1.5 million has already been returned to us, so that again we can loan that money out, and you can see some of the businesses in the Abaco area that are located there. We've expanded the scope of the loan program to include other industries, such as the aerospace industry. We have a couple companies, and we've also used that as a match for some of the county programs. Life sciences isn't merely Scripps and Mox Pond or even just research, bench to bed, as we look to expand how we can grow that industry, and that picture happens to be the Institute for Healthy Living, which is a partnership with private nursing home facility, Jupiter Medical Center, and actually Scripps too. Lastly, in this area, land acquisition. If you're able to land bank or get land through negotiated approvals and hold on to that, that's a great way, as Gordon's has apparently. And we have two here, right off of 95, from DDR and Sonoma, and I have to say, the Sonoma piece was one of the reasons that probably the land costs, the cost of the units that Pulte was building there that was referenced were so high that the town did demand a lot of things out of them. So it's not that 9 acres, and also 10% of the units to be smaller so that they'd be somewhat workable. Okay. All right, like everybody else, we've got a workforce housing problem, and in Jupiter, the median sales price of a home was $385,000. So obviously, it's an issue. So how are we closing the gap? Last year we adopted a workforce housing ordinance that includes both inclusionary and linkage requirements. I mentioned the ROAS, and also, again, as we've heard today, expanding housing options. And also, Jupiter, although it doesn't make that much of a difference, we have encouraged businesses to go ahead and small businesses even to have units or accessory units. And by relaxing the code, that enabled the business on the bottom, which is actually a pet boarding place, to have someone there full time. So that's kind of cool. So can we really close that gap? Workforce housing ordinance requires that all new residential development of 10 units or more must provide workforce housing on-site, and that's 6% of however many units are created. There are density increases, and for those units that they add through the various density increase mechanism, 20% of those must be workforce units. There are options that you do not have to put all the units on-site yet, because that gets around the issue of how can you afford it when you've got, let's say, a condo and all the HOA fees and whatnot. They can donate land, construct off-site, or payment in lieu, and you've got to keep the payment in lieu amounts high enough so they don't automatically choose that. Again, non-residential linkage fee, generally all commercial and other types of non-residential are required to participate projects of 10,000 square feet or more. $1 square foot, which is really very low, but politically, that was the way to get the foot in the door, and we'll go from there. Right now, we just actually had one, since we passed that one, entity that had to be part of that. Okay, yes, we're good. Real quickly, for those of you that are sort of built out, you go, where we're going to put them, just remember, there's redevelopment, there's small infill, but also just as important, and what Jupiter is going to use some of its money for, is to maintain the existing workforce housing stock, because again, that's all disappearing through, gentrification, if you will. So purchasing units in danger of leaving the affordable category and rehabbing others, there's two ways to do that. So, and just lastly, as I thought about, this is really on initiatives that local governments are currently doing, but it also made me think that we as planners and elected officials need to be thinking really far out in the future, not just 3 years or 5 years. And, we read the paper about changes in, let's say, driverless cars and the increase in Uber and all that. How is that ultimately going to affect parking? Or the changes in jobs? More and more automation is occurring even in fast food, so I read. So again, how does that affect what we're doing? So just sort of my last piece of advice. And that's a whole nother story, but it's important. So thank you very much.